It's time, it's time. It's time. Welcome once again to another fantabulous retro game collecting panel here at SFGE. I'm glad to be back here. Just a quick show of hands. Who was here for the panel last year? Welcome back and welcome all newcomers. I am just stoked to be able to talk to you tonight. So much action in store for you tonight. Well, moderate amounts of action, but still action. This year we're going to discuss not only retro collecting, but there's a spin on it this year, okay? A very important spin. We're going to also be discussing refurbishment, restoration, and most importantly, the role that we play in that as collectors, something that I've really taken to heart lately. I'm going to share some thoughts with you today. I want to start by quoting Mike Wolf of American Pickers, a show that I enjoy from time to time, and also a show whose format I've kind of borrowed to emulate the evolution of my current pickup show. But yeah, he said something on an episode one night that's really stuck with me over time, that always echoes in the back of my mind, that applies to us too. We've got the best job because we discover things, and we're one of the links in the chain of preserving them. I don't know, that just gets me right there. Don't want to be too overly sentimental about it, but we have an important job in what we do. Beyond just collecting stuff, putting it on the shelf and all that, we got to think about what we put back out into the world too. And that's the segue into my first main topic here, reselling. Which reselling is commonly a very dirty and ugly term, and as it should be in a lot of aspects, but there's a difference in what we do and smelly reselling. We all resell. If you're really collecting, you resell. How many people in here are already active collectors? Didn't expect to see too many hands go down. So, but there's a difference, yeah. If we didn't sell, we'd eventually wallpaper an entire apartment complex with Mario Duck Hunt cartridges and Wii Sports discs. Eventually, you got stuff you got to trade or offload, and it happens. And it's all in how you do that. Flipping without refurbishment, restoration, or proper care for those items. That's what makes it the dirty word, and it's all too common of a thing. It's all too common of a thing that I see now. Buying stuff off of people or not. You see cartridges on flea market tables, sun bleached, left to die, and I'm even seeing a trend in some of the mom and pop shops and even some of the bigger stores selling retro cartridges and games at retail, trying to pass this stuff off as working merchandise. You get this stuff home and you're Q-tipping it and it's filthy. You're getting boogers out of it, you're getting spaghetti sauce out of it. And what a missed opportunity. What a missed opportunity there to take something and make it whole again. You gotta think about these games. A lot of these things are 30 years old already. The Atari stuff that I restored not too long ago is now 40 years old. Do you think it's gonna make it to 70? I don't. Not in that condition, and again, that's where we come in, okay? That's where we come in. Paying for your gaming experiences, though, through the refurbishment and through the reselling, that's a rewarding experience. And that's a case in which everybody wins. And we're going to talk about all the aspects in which we do. Rewarding in all aspects, and you're paid to collect. You're paid to pursue your passion. And the reason this hits home with me is because I've argued with people recently in YouTube comment sections about, oh, well, you're just a reseller. Well, you're a reseller. Why would you say anything about reselling? You're just a reseller. There's a difference, okay? There's the guy that buys the Mario 3 cartridge at a yard sale and then writes $40 on it on the label with the Sharpie and puts it out there on the flea market table to never sell and eventually die. And then there's us, where we can take this stuff home, we can clean it up, and we can add years to its existence. That's an important thing, because you gotta think, it's all about preservation. I mean, there's some indulgence, there's enjoyment, there's a nostalgia that we get out of this stuff, but not to, personify it so much, but the games are almost an entity too. Something that exists, and it's up to us to make sure that stuff is around for many more years. And people talking about selling things again, you gotta think there's a whole other part of the retro gaming community out there that does not care to be at yard sales, in the morning at 6 a.m. trying to find this stuff. They just as soon buy it clean and tested from you at a later date, and there's nothing wrong with that, because believe me, I'm not yearning to get up at 6 a.m. either, but I feel great after I've gone out and done it. But again, the key point is the best part that comes out of any of it is we've added years onto these games' lifespans. A lot of games in which don't have a lot left as it sits. You know, the ones sitting in the dank, dark basements and the smelly, hot attics. And in some cases, we don't find that stuff until we ask. You know, last year's panel, we talked a lot about tips on how to find these things. So I wanted to kind of take it a step further this year and not only talk about ways to refurbish and the benefits that you're going to reap from that and how to do that, but you know, we'll touch back on the tips too and kind of tie all that stuff together. So first and foremost, cartridges, which I think everybody's most interested in. We'll get into discs, but cartridges, first and foremost, have got to be disassembled and cleaned. And again, some of the stuff's going to be obvious, and my esteemed colleague, CMRetro here, is going to touch on some little bit more advanced stuff later on in the presentation. But again, I see that this stuff's not being done.
He says advanced. It's not advanced. I do decent work with small electronics, but it's
well, you've earned a few more badges on your stash than I have, so yeah.
That works.
But, you know, again, I see it not being done, so I hope that, you know, I look at this and I'm like, well, this is common knowledge. Everybody knows to do this, but apparently they don't, because I'm still buying stuff that people, oh, it's tested, man, yeah, it works, man. Nah, it's not, dude. When there's spaghetti sauce in it, you didn't test it. It isn't even with it anyway. It's not a utensil. I mean, I'm quoting a true story here. Spaghetti sauce. How did that get in there?
If you open your PS2 and there's dead roaches.
Oh, I said, yeah, I'm going to get to that part of it. Live creatures. There's a segment of the presentation on that.
Live creatures.
But to start with, you know, for a 4-in-1 screwdriver, you can get the little star bits for it that will open up the NES cartridges and most of the Nintendo systems as well. And I think it works on Genesis and most of your Sega stuff too. That stuff's on eBay for like $1, $2, $3, depending on how patient you are, if you want to wait for it to come from China. So you have that, and I'll have some of those out here to look at for those of you that don't know what they look like, but it's pretty self-explanatory. But the Q-tips and the alcohol are next to godliness, and you hope you have that around the house. And if you don't, we're talking, what, under $10 for all the stuff to make sure that even if you are selling it again, you're putting these cartridges back out there with their best chance. They need you, and there's no guarantee that the people beyond you, the next owner, is going to take as great care of it as you did, but at least you did. At least that stuff gets back out there and it's got that many more years on its life, because eventually, you know, we're going to come to a point where we're finding stuff and it's too late. I've already hit that in some instances where I find Atari stuff that is just water damaged and it's just died, and
computer stuff.
I have a moment, you know.
There's a digital life to things.
There's a digital life to things, as you all know, and like things are going to die. Cartridges are going to rot. CDs are not going to perform anymore. And the longer you can give it, the better. The better for everybody involved. Call it a stinky reseller or whatever. If I buy something to flip, I'm going to make sure I put 100% effort into making sure that what I'm selling works perfectly. If you come to my booth, everything has been tested and cleaned. Now, I will say this, I have like maybe 20 games over there that came from my new game store that I'm a partner with, and I have not had a chance to clean the outsides of those, but I have tested thoroughly that they play. So I have some Windex ready, and I'm going to clean them before I sell them.
And your involvement in that, look what you're bringing to that at such a large volume. So at any rate, it's everybody's opportunity to do that, you know, to take it that step. Goo Gone, I had a bottle of Goo Gone I was going to bring, just so if you haven't seen Goo Gone, you know what it looks like, but the bottle started leaking. I didn't want it in my wife's expensive Mickey Mouse suitcase, so I lit it at home. But Goo Gone, it's an orange citrus solvent, and you're going to want that for getting the dadgum Sharpie marker off of these cartridges. Everybody had to think about writing their name on everything back in the day. If anybody found that, are they really going to give it back to you, or are they just going to go have the best day of their freaking life? You know, I've always wondered why people did that, unless it was a sibling situation where one doesn't want to share with the other or whatever. But
Blockbuster videos, highly guilty of.
I've got BBVs on some really expensive stuff in my house. So, but the Goo Gone works really good for that. Just don't want to get it on the label. But I've always been a fan of using that to get those things cleaned up, and it really makes the plastic look a lot better too when you're finished. Gives it a nice healthy sheen.
And don't confuse Goo Gone with Goof Off. Goof Off will eat through everything you own and your neighbors below you and everything. It's
the
like
hull of the Titanic.
Like alien acid. It will just go right through it.
And then I'll admit that only recently I was thrown on the scent of those tamper-evident silver rental stickers where you pull them off and it's got that checkerboard stuff you can't get off the back of it. A pink pencil eraser takes it right off. A jackhammer won't, but a pink pencil eraser will.
Goo Gone will get that too with a good scrub.
Okay, see, I didn't try it on that, but once I got turned on to the eraser, so, you know, you're ended up with some really good-looking stuff here. And again, if it's for you, obviously you want it to look that way, but if it's going back out, That's something that I feel good about at the end of the day. And at the end of the day is a phrase that gets used a lot, but I think it's fitting in this situation. At the end of the day, you've really done something. As part of a retro gaming community, you've played a part in extending the life of the very lifeblood of this whole thing, you know? It's very important. And we're gonna talk about discs, because obviously, you know, you get discs secondhand and they're very rarely mint. And you know, some systems discs can take more abuse than others. PS2 is pretty resilient, but who in here, show of hands, has ever paid to have a disc resurfaced? Not shaming you if you did, nothing wrong with that. I've done it until I got a machine. But yeah, and then over time, that ends up not being a cost-effective way depending on the volume you're doing, and that's why I'm bringing up what I'm bringing up now. Anybody here currently own a resurfacing machine? And we're gonna talk about hustling. We're gonna talk about straight up hustling on a machine. And I brought my machine because I think it's a pretty common one. I see a lot of shops that have it. And you know, we're gonna have Q&A at the end. I'm gonna invite y'all to take a closer look at some of this stuff before we conclude, but you should know, if you don't already, that GameStop, and you know, there's a stigma against GameStop. A lot of people just hate GameStop. GameStop's your best friend, and let me tell you why. GameStop, often during promos, will pay you complete in-box market price for your disc-only stuff. And you're always gonna find disc-only stuff because there's always been that habit people had of getting the Case Logic books, filling it with their game disc and throwing the boxes away. God knows we don't want that. But we talked about last year about not being the condition snob. If it's disc only, but the price is still right, let's go ahead and pick that up. You hope that you're finding loose boxes in the wild anyway over time, and if you're not, you should be. Half the time people will just give them to you. If you find empty boxes with no games in them, put them away. I keep a big box at home to try to match lost discs with their new home and their new cases. But yeah, that's the thing, GameStop. You bring the disc in there, they don't get it the boxes, and they're gonna make a box for it. They're gonna put it on the shelf. They're gonna do that part for you. So A, you've given this game another chance, because here's a retailer that's very confident they can get market value for this game, and I think in most cases they do. You've put that game back out into the wild working, fantastic. But again, you're getting current market value. They always get, you know, you see the memes making fun of them about trade-in value, and for some things it's warranted, but what I see is it's always right at or even above, when you get into those overlapping promos, above market value. You should know that I paid for all 3 of my current gen systems with discs, boxes of discs. You know, you saw me do it. PS4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, free. Yeah, I had money in the disc when I purchased them, but the overall money I made out of the lots, combining ones with other boxes and selling them later on, you know, I ended up with no money in the lots, and then take the rest to GameStop when it makes more sense. Because when you're cutting your closing costs out and the shipping out, and you're just taking them to GameStop, what a huge convenience that is. And again, you know, they're good with it. So that's where this comes into play, the JFJ Easy Pro. And you want this, if you can get better than this, go for it. But I think this is the best that you're gonna get. You can't really go any cheaper than this and still achieve the same level of workhorse. I've used cheaper ones, and they do work. Now, you'll see reviews that say they don't. They will work, just not for very long. This thing right here, I've been using it for years, and it's nowhere near ready to die, whereas cheaper ones, you might get 20, 30 discs, and the motor's gonna burn up. They're only made for quick jobs.
Mine is a 2-disc model from an old Blockbuster Video, and it's been used since Blockbuster Video was around in my town, which is easily 8 years ago, 9 years ago that I bought the thing. So
yeah, so
it still works perfectly.
They're absolutely fantastic to have. It's a workhorse, and you know, you can get this thing on Amazon if you don't already have one for $129. That includes supplies, and when I say supplies, I mean enough stuff to where you're gonna do your first 100 to 200 discs before you need to resupply. And then you're only talking about maybe 20 or 30 bucks for more pads and more liquid. Everybody has a way that they do it. There's a rhythm that you get to it, depending on what kind of damage and the level of severity we're talking about. And you'll learn eventually some of these discs, if you don't already mess around with this, you know what's obviously a lost cause and what's not. Oh yeah, of course mine has some.
Look at it.
Well, that was dope right there.
Mine's been customized, but But yeah, and we talked about
Can we zoom in
acquiring
on
the empty boxes when you can, because optimally you want to make complete in-box copies. They're going to be worth more for you. But I think everybody needs one of these for the amount of discs that you're going to find out in the wild, and the way you can at least conveniently put them back out there, turn them into trade credit, and come on, we all play new games too. Make sure you don't pay for a single game. For a few years there, I didn't. So that's fantastic stuff.
Yes, make GameStop work for you too.
They do, and
That's
again,
part of your
it
story.
sounds like we're taking advantage of them, but that's the price they're saying that they know they can get above, they can make a profit on. So if they're declaring that, again, this is just a convenience thing.
And go in there when they're doing the 2-for-1s and you get more trade credit for this or towards this title. You know, make GameStop work for your
60% for 6 or more games traded, and I'll bring you a box of them.
Until they go belly up.
And we hope they don't. Honestly, I hope that they're making that money, but
Yeah.
you know, some of it you will literally be wowed at. Because I think some people don't even check trade-in sometimes. Oh, they're gonna give me 10 cents. Take a look, man. Sometimes you're just like, what? Why is this $10? I paid 25 cents for this, you know? So that's how we do it. And, you know, I also want to talk about tonight the state of the market, because that's something that's ever changing, and something that as collectors and as people that are trying to do this, because let's face it, we're all on a budget. That's where the resale thing stops being ugly. You can't just buy, and never put anything back into the project. Nobody with any sense would. We got to be abreast of what goes on in the market, and that's ever changing. And these are changes, I think, since last year. You know, I don't think we touched on any of this, although this ties into some of the tips and stuff that we gave. But one thing that I'm really seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing it too, is the Gamecube stuff is on the rise. It's on the rise. It's unbelievable what some of these titles are bringing, and what really gets interesting is where they're so much more valuable than their PS2 or original Xbox counterparts in the case of, you know, your multi-plats out there. And to speculate, and I think it's almost obvious, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's Nintendo. That's generally more desirable. There's a lot of exclusive Nintendo content on the versions of those games in some cases. And it's also pretty hot to want a full GameCube collection. There's a lot of that going around right now, and I think that's, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think that's a lot more accessible than PlayStation.
It's more
numbers.
obtainable than either PlayStation or Xbox. You know, the amount of titles for both of those machines is just out of control. Whereas the Nintendo kept it a little bit more calm until the Wii came out.
Yeah. So basically what I'm getting at is, if you see a game and it seems like, oh, that's probably cheese, check it first. I've sold some GameCube cheese lately that just blew my mind.
Them Bratz games, man.
Like those, like an Eddie game was like $20. Who wants this? Why do you? Okay, maybe somebody wants this.
Okay.
I don't know, but here you go.
Thanks, Bratz.
But I almost just put that in a trade pile just to go take somewhere. I probably would have got 25 cents for it, but $20. The GameCube stuff, you got to watch it on both aspects. Make sure that you're not paying too much, but make sure you don't leave it there too, because some of this stuff, because of that collecting, is just out of control. And tying right into that, this is something that's definitely taken a big spike since we last talked. The GameCube controllers. I don't know what's going on with this thing. If there's a world shortage, usually N64 is what we think of when we think of seriously rare controllers and the big bucks, and you still do, but the GameCube controllers are out of control. No pun intended. You know, we've got the indigo and the black controllers of some of the most common color systems. I'm seeing them go for as much as $30. So, you know, I find those all the time for a couple of dollars.
The Wavebird's 50 with the dongle.
The Wavebird has stayed nuts. So yeah, again, it's just a very desirable thing. And there again is another thing that you have an opportunity to make whole. Because I say I find these all the time, but you also find them all the time having been used for dog toys or run over by cars or whatever. The parts are so cheap. I mean, the thumbsticks are $1 out of China. You can have them shipped in. They may not be the highest quality every time, but I think they're pretty close. And again, you're putting that stuff back out there. It's obviously in demand. There again, that's satisfying to me and it's profitable to you. And if you're collecting all of them, you know, for the sake of having all the variants, that becomes very easy to do as well. And you're really adding intrinsic value to your already robust collection.
Part of the thing I love is fixing a joystick. When a thumbstick is broken on a controller and I can bring it back to life and make it work again, it makes my heart happy. Like yeah, somebody can use this again. You know what I mean?
Severe levels of heart happiness. PS2 is in its garbage phase. I know that sounds terrible, but all platforms have them. NES experienced this 20 years ago, and that's where I actually bulked up my collection. It was right around the turn of the millennia. 99-cent bargain bin NES stuff at GameStop. Stuff that's 20 and $30 now, even if it's common. Only rare exceptions are really exempt on this PS2 rule. There's still some JRPG stuff out there that's bringing the big bucks, and that is what it is. But I've also seen games that were $10 games, $15 games, and now they're like $4 or $5. And I'm sitting there like, oh, $5 a piece. Well, that sounds good. And then all of a sudden, no, that's not going to cut it because it's just not worth that anymore. Again, I know we're talking about saving and rescuing these games, but obviously it's not cost effective to rescue every game. It just can't be done. But this is to make sure we're being cognizant of what's going on in the market and that we're not overpaying for these things. Because just now getting back into it after kind of taking about a year off from it, I'm really blown away by some of the changes in the market values on stuff that I thought I knew the values on. The original Xbox is only a small step behind PS2 for the small reason that with Xbox One, we enjoy the backwards compatibility, you know, in some instances, and that's made some of those a little bit more desirable. If we see a PlayStation 5, and we will, but if we see a PlayStation 5 that has full backwards compatibility, which is something Sony's always kind of stinged us on, we're gonna see another shift more than likely, so, you know, but right now it's in its garbage phase, so be real careful on your PS2 stuff. Not wanting to pay too much for that. And I'm still seeing counterfeiting on the rise, and it's usually on really expensive cartridges, but whereas eBay has policies against it, I just don't think they can police it, or they just don't. But what's happening is it's really driving down the values, and I'll use this as an example. Conker's Bad Fur Day, we all know that's a spicy meatball, but you're real quick to say, oh man, that's a $100 game. Well, maybe it is if you get lucky, but it's not now. It's going as low as 50 in some instances, but there again, you hope you don't overpay for this stuff because you show up and you see one and you get real excited, you want to jump on it before the guy behind you, but you got to make sure you don't overpay for this stuff, and to do that, we've got to know what in the market is either driving things down or up. And in a lot of cases, sometimes it's not counterfeiting, it's just if a game really spikes in value, everybody sees they have it, they try to sell it, they're all undercutting each other on the market till all of a sudden a $60 game is a $20 game. So we just got to stay up to date on sold values. But we've touched on the basics as far as cartridge refurbishment. Again, not much to know there, but some certain things that you can use, some certain agents to kind of help you in that. We've talked about the Easy Pro. I think nobody should be without one of these. For $129, like, oh God, I don't want to drop that, but I've made thousands on this thing, and it's still rocking. I mean, I'm still, you can ask my youngin' here, I'm still buffing discs daily out in the garage, so that happens. And like last year, I brought some things to kind of show everybody. Nothing is gonna blow you up. I don't have a box of little Samsons or anything, but well, that's pretty cool. We'll get to that in a second.
You voided the warranty, sir.
Yeah, well, not me.
Oh,
some crazy guy up north, but not me. But still, no, it's amazing, and I'll bet you it still works. These are items that I've picked this year. Now we saw stuff, you know, career-wide that I brought last year, but I also want to touch on the fact that this stuff's still out there because I know that it seems like it's just a flooded, saturated thing everywhere and depending on where you go, it's dog eat dog. There's people really snatching stuff up. You got to be at the sale early, and sometimes it's already gone because some Craigslister picked it up a week early or whatever. But it is still out there. I'm really getting back into it light this year, and I'm already finding some really cool stuff, and we're going to look at some of that. I'm going to step around here just to kind of hold it up. This game has eluded me for years, and that seems silly because it's not really rare. It's just rare to see it, but it's not rare. They printed plenty of these. Mario Kart Double Dash, dadgummit. I could never find this for a price I'm willing to pay. Got it for $4 this year, and most importantly, it's got the bonus disc in it.
Double disc.
Oh man, and I gotta tell you, again, here we are back on that Gamecube spike, that Gamecube curve. This is a $70 game now. Jiminy Christmas, I would never pay that. And now I don't have to. Thrilled to put this on the shelf, and again, I'll have everybody up here to look at some of this stuff when we conclude. This item here actually comes to me by way of a fellow friend of my YouTube channel, CMRetro. Super, super cool dude, and I'll have links to the channels of the two people I'm going to mention in the description of this video when I recap it on my channel. These are cool people, and you should really check them out. But Donkey Kong on Intellivision complete. He found this in someone's garage for $1, you know, and it was like, he doesn't collect the Intellivision. He's like, Murr, you probably want this. And I said, yes, I probably do. And scored that for $1. It's not an incredibly expensive game. You can get them for about 15 bucks. But it's a beaut. It could be in better condition, but again, where are you going to find it for $1? You know, so there again, this stuff is out there. this item right here is a PS2 game. This is one of those exceptions to the rule we talked about earlier. Again, most of these games are just turd-tacular, $2, $3 games now, even if they're good. It's just not their time to be expensive, but this one definitely is. Champions Return to Arms. This was off the Champions of North series, the EverQuest, which, you know, the EverQuest we use in D&D, the same game, the pen and paper game. This was an online game, which I assumed was long since dead, and it is, because online on PS2 is dead. But this game itself, I mean, there's still an offline element to these games, and they've really shot up in value. I've passed over these before, and I feel like an idiot now that I know I could have been playing them, because I love me some EverQuest. I got this for 15 bucks. It's about a $40 game. They knew what they had, and they didn't want to come off of it, and I didn't want to go up on, I didn't want to pay 20, but I got them down to 15, so I was happy with that. We were talking a little bit before we started here, because I think this catches some eyes. We've got some somewhat rare NES peripherals over here. We've got a 4-score, which is like a smaller version of the Satellite, and it's a 4-banger for your controllers, for your 4-player games. Yeah, if you want to hold those, that would be a great help.
Little 4-score action over here.
That's a cute little unit, and it's in fantastic shape. Only paid $3 for that. They bring about 20 bucks on the market, so you hope you find that every day. And this thing, I mean, we were talking about it earlier. I don't know what game you use this on. I should be telling you that, but I've never seen one. I've never used one. I never knew anyone that had it, so I have yet to try it out. But I've cleaned it up. It's a beaut. I have no doubt it works. So
they call it a track ball.
The quick shot joy ball. Yeah. Joy and ball. So when you put ball and joy together, you're going to have a good time. It doesn't actually
spin. It just kind of tilts on an axis in there, and it's clicking some contacts, and it's probably a trackball-esque type situation the way it feels when you play with it. But
it's clicking for real, so I'm sure it's going to bang. But $5 for that, it's a $20 item. That's about the average. And then we got a power pad here. And it was so funny because there was all these baby clothes on this table, and I was like, oh my God, there's nothing here. Back to that going out at 6 a.m. and I've barely finished my coffee, and I'm leaning on this thing, looking at baby bibs, like, and then I realize I'm on a power pad. I'm like, thank God there's nobody else here. I'm about to get caught.
What's the power pad go for right now?
The power pads, it's, you know, again, we talk about those rare. It's really rare. It's rare. Everybody had them. I mean, they're not rare. They made tons of it. It's just rare to see it. That's the thing. You're not going to find one. You're not going to trip over it. It's not blades of grass or air, but it's rare to see it. They're going for about 30, 35 bucks.
Say 20, 30 bucks? Okay.
Yeah, so not bad.
My parents confiscated ours about a week after we had it because they couldn't take it anymore. We're on the second floor, and we would use our hands. We would bang and run on that thing with our hands, and they were like, that's it. Power pad. Gone.
Did you say what you got that one for?
That one was $5. So yeah, I wasn't even gonna haggle on that. If that's really all you want for it, and it's in such great shape. This is the piece right here. This comes to me also by another friend of my channel, Canadian Retro, one of my Canadian buddies from up north. I've met a lot of Canadian folks through YouTube. They're all about their stuff too up there, their retro stuff. But
is that an ST drive?
It is. Yeah. My God, it smells like one. That's the first thing I did when I pulled it out of the box. I smelled it. It's an Atari ST external drive. Anybody that watches the show, you know I'm an Atari ST nut.
This guy's the best.
I cut my teeth on these things. Our first thing to ever play games on was an Atari ST, because they'd already failed in the market come like 86, I think, so I'm sure we got a great deal on it. You know, we didn't have a lot of money coming up, but it was such a unique computer, and it outbanged the IBMs on graphics all day with a VGM monitor stock. There was nothing they couldn't do, and MIDI inputs. I mean, they were so ahead of their time, but yeah, Canadian Retro picked this thing up at somebody's yard sale. I was like, what is this doing there in the middle of there's no other games, there was no. $7 for an Atari ST drive. It needs the cables, but it is so clean. I mean, it makes me want to smack myself in the face. It's so clean. And, you know, I don't even need it. I mean, the ST has a drive in it, although I can think of some things I could probably do with it between formatting and copying, backing up. I mean, this media is dated. Eventually, it just stops working on its own, the discs, you know, the film inside them. But this right here, $7, this goes for almost $100 at auction for one of these things. And as clean as this thing is, I bet you could squeeze 110 out of it. Just absolutely fantastic. But again, I wanted to bring some things to show and tell. These are things that I've acquired this year. Again, just keeping with the theme that it is still out there. And of course, I hope everybody leaves from here today with a renewed vigor. Not that you're not already cleaning your stuff up, but with a sense of importance when you're doing it. The fact that that's the best thing we can be doing as retro gamers, so that we can make sure that, you know, the next few generations are going to have this stuff to enjoy because they do like it. We got to put years back on its lifespan. I'm going to turn the floor over to Capn Retro for a little bit here.
I just wanted to say on your topic there, like, we said dirty reseller at the top. Like, Andy will buy lots off eBay of scratched discs. 500 discs, all scratched, nothing works, don't as is, $20 or whatever he does. And then he will run everyone through here and find the ones that work, salvage. It's not like he's going out and buying games. Andy's a collector first and foremost, and a giant nerd, part two, is the second part of that. And everything from his childhood he still has. Like, it's ridiculous when you go to his house. I am a catch and release fisherman when it comes to games. I have about 150 things that'll never leave my house, but everything else is up for grabs. Like, let's buy, oh, I want to play that. I'll trade you that to get to this, and let's go to that. No, I want pinball machines and arcades. I do resell, but I also play the hell out of everything. So we don't like the dirty reseller. What we say is like the guy at the flea market that wants $30 for a $2 game, and he hasn't cleaned it in 7 years, and it's sun damaged.
And wrote the price on it with a Sharpie.
And that guy is a dirty reseller. We are a refurbish and a preserver, a preservationist.
It's the preservation. That's what I really wanted to touch on most. I don't think we really put enough thought into the fact that we do that and how wonderful that is. That's the best thing we can get back to it.
With all of this is I am addicted to hunting for stuff. I have everything I've ever wanted. I can't stop leaving my house and going after deals. So it's hook it to my veins. Let's go drive 100 hours to get that thing and bring it home. And oh my God, I've got it now. And then 6 weeks later, it's like, oh, I'll trade that for this thing because I gotta have it. That's my problem. If you watch my show, it's all over the place. The Capn Retro channel, the Emceemur channel is very. He's specified what he's doing and he's attacking it like a boss. My channel is like, ha ha ha.
It does tend to be that way.
Just wide-eyed and stupid. And like, I do what I want, and it hasn't gained me a following per se, but I think what I do is respected in that I do what I want on YouTube, and I'm not trying to chase any goals. I'm just making a show, and if you want to follow along with my dumb life, you sure can. But the main thing I do, and the main thing I have fallen in love with doing in the last 3 years, is buying and replacing and repairing and fixing arcades and pinball machines.
Some of which are here tonight.
It started, again, I have nothing on the table right now. I do have a booth, and there's a bunch of refurbished and cleaned things that I have fixed up over in the booth for sale. And then I have two pinballs out on the floor right now. There's a Dirty Harry on the floor.
Dirty Harry.
And a Secret Service. The Secret Service I paid $200 for. I put about $600 in parts in it, and time and labor, and I think it's worth $2,500, something like that. It was a barn find. I found a $400 F-14 Tomcat last year. The same thing, I spent about $400, had about 8 in it and all, sold it for 16. So you just double it, and it goes right back into buying something else and playing with it and fixing it. And I get to play pinball in my garage for 6 weeks, and okay, let's sell it and get another one. You know, it's ridiculous and it's fun, and it makes me happy to watch someone else play something I fixed. That's the other thing. It's like, I fixed that, check that out. You know, I get this like glow, and I really enjoy doing it. And I knew absolutely nothing about electronics up until 3 years ago, really. I mean, little things here and there. I was the kid who put his own stereo in his car, put the big speakers in the back and wired everything up and made it all work and didn't kill myself. So that I had a little bit of like, I would tweak with things. I'm a guitar player and a musician and a somewhat of a pianist, not a very good pianist, but I can play piano. And I loved tinkering with keyboards when I was a kid, so I was always taking stuff apart and messing with it. Not that I ever really fixed anything as a kid. I would generally take something apart and it never really went back together. That stopped with the arcade and the pinball stuff. Like, I really wanted the arcade machine, the first one I bought, to work, and it took me about 3 months to figure out everything I needed to do, going through Google and YouTube and looking in forums and checking things. And, well, I'm calling this thing the wrong thing. I don't know that this is a resistor. This is a transistor. No, it's a resistor. And like, I'm learning parts and things. I have zero schooling in electronics, but I have saved and refurbished over 17 pinball machines now that were not working when I bought them originally and have now come back to life. Same thing with arcade machines. I have an arcade in Toccoa, Georgia, up north. It recently just opened, like 2 weeks ago. But that was one of my goals in life. I wanted to own an arcade as a kid. And I was like, man, I would love to own an arcade. And at 38, I decided, let's start buying pinball machines. At 40, I'll be 41 next week. I have an arcade in Toccoa now. There's 25 arcade machines up there right now, a pool table, air hockey, a basketball goal thing. I need a skee ball machine. I'm waiting on one of those. And I've got 5 pins that are up there, and I'm going to keep a nice rotation of stuff going. It's an hourly system. And so far, so good. We've had a couple customers every day. It's not been blown up anything, but it's in Toccoa. It's in a small little retirement town in the North Georgia mountains. And if you're on your way out there, it's called Game Switch is the name of the actual store, retro shop called Game Switch. And it's in the back of the Game Switch. Captain Retro's arcade at Game Switch.
The important thing to touch on is that you jumped into this sight unseen.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's important, just like these retro games out there, to know that these machines are out there too. You know, there's some great stuff here tonight, obviously, that you can buy, and I'm in the market. But this stuff's out there as well that needs to be rescued. These are badges I want to get on my sash.
It really started with home console stuff.
Yeah.
The very first thing I remember, like soldering and fixing and like finding out that, well, this thing is a resistor that needs to be changed on here. This one's fried, and like I finally figured it out, and it was a Sega CD Model 1, I believe, a Sega CD that I repaired.
Yeah.
Got it turned on, and it came back to life, and I about shit myself right there. Excuse my language. I about was like, I can't believe I did something with my hands. And knowledge, you know what I mean? Like had school been like YouTube, oh my God, I'd have paid attention and done things. I'd have found the teacher I liked, and I'd have watched what he wanted to teach me. As it was, school was a mishmash of doing whatever I wanted and floating through the world on a whim, because I didn't know. At 35, I decided I want to do music and own an arcade, and that's, in the last 5 years, I've made it happen. I also make music and stuff for films and TV shows, and I do a series called The Lost Pins, which is about pinball machines that never got made. There is actually one of them out there in the floor right now, the Wilder Ham.
I saw that.
It's a guy who took a Gladiator pinball machine and refurbed it back into the Zelda A Link to the Past pinball machine that it was originally supposed to be. And actually it went from being Zelda to being American Gladiators to being Gladiator, and he turned it back into a Zelda. But it's out there right now. I did a whole episode on him, and I can't wait to meet that guy. I haven't actually met him in person yet, but I can't wait to go play that thing. And he's the same thing. He has a game shop, and he loves cleaning things and fixing things. Next thing you know, he's building his own pinball machines. I'm like, let's go there. So for me, it's about journeying and having fun. And like, I do all of this because I love it. I love gaming, and I love YouTubing. I mean, I like filming things and editing stuff. You know what I mean? I have fun doing it. So.
But this is me. I want to ask you, and this is me asking. And again, I don't have the badges on my sash that you do in this instance. I want to get into soldering, and beyond just looking up some videos and watching it, what is my cost to get into it? Because I'm not soldering with my fingers. How did you get started, and what did you use? Where did you get it?
The first thing I would say about soldering something is, again, that's a situation. It's only when it's called for. You don't necessarily have to solder generally anything. It depends on what the situation is. With pinball machines, you do a lot of multimeter testing. There's a thing called a multimeter, and it tests for voltages and different things. And you can check your diodes and check your voltages, and you can make sure stuff's working and sending a signal where it's supposed to go once you learn how to read schematics, which is, I'm very slowly starting to do that too, figuring out this goes to that, and this diode works for that, and this goes to this. And it's really, I think you'd take to it if you really sat down and started looking at it, because it looks daunting. When you open a pinball machine, you're like, oh my God. And then once you really like zoom in and take one part at a time and start to figure it out, and you can trace it all the way back to the board, and you're like, oh, it's over here, this resistor works it, that there, it's up here, this ain't working. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you get to it. So it took me a while to figure it out, but once I did, I kind of took to it. And I technical terms, not my forte. Electronics knowledge, not really my forte. I have yet to be shocked by a CRT monitor while discharging it. I have yet to be any kind of like real physical damage to any component or thing I have messed with. I would say with soldering though, start with something broken. Take a busted old stereo, take an old VCR, pull the motherboard out, get yourself an electronic soldering iron, get you some solder wire, get you some solder, like I like the little wick kind, it's like a remover.
What are we looking at cost-wise?
Oh, maybe, well, if you want the basic bones stuff, you can be in for under $40 for everything you're gonna need. Like,
And see, that's why, because this stuff here, again, I know I touched on some pretty basic stuff, but it's important to know the costs on this to know that, because obviously you can get into this stuff entry level, and you can still do great things without having to figure out how to pull a giant machine apart, but eventually you may want to take it to the next level. And as you know, I've got those Commodores I want you to look at.
Right.
I've got some C64s, the joystick
and I
ports
have
aren't
to
working.
come fix the audio on your Ferrari as well. So
That's true.
We definitely have to do that, and that'll be some soldering, I'm sure. I'm gonna have
So,
to do some soldering. So I bought him a $100, was it a hard drive, race driver?
Yeah,
A race driver to
driver.
sit down, Ferrari cabinet. The guy had it for $100. I went and got it, gave it to him. I was like, dude, this is yours. I'm starting
This guy's
your
all right.
arcade. I've ruined his wife's life and his life by shoving arcades in their garage. That they weren't only in my garage. I was like, you take some.
I can tell people I own a Ferrari now.
That's very cool. And then what else we got? We got a
We got the SNK mechanized
attack and a Tetris
one.
and a Tetris. So he's acquired 3 arcade machines from my crazy lifestyle. Andy and I grew up together and knew each other from 4th grade on, basically, and then fell apart from high school, and YouTube got us back together. We spent 20 years not talking and not even knowing what happened to each other, and then we started doing YouTube videos about the same stupid topic, gaming and being annoying, and he's good at both.
So it's important to know that those machines are out there, because, and I did a video on my channel about this, but those machines, even as they sit, I mean, we've got probably about 650 in all of them,
Yeah.
and I would say there's probably easily 1,500 or more there.
There's $1,000
even
in
in the
that Ferrari
condition that
alone,
they're
dude.
in.
That thing's
So,
worth $800 to $1,000.
and the important thing is to go ahead and acquire it, because I think it's very, and you could probably back this up, but I think it's probably very rare to find machines out there that don't need some kind of work, because there again, they've been where they are, and we're talking about years off their life, but we're talking about putting them back on too.
I'm sure y'all are aware, but pinball machines and arcade machines weren't really built to have a shelf life of longer than like 7 years, 7 to 10 years, and then operators swap them out, buy new stuff, get that thing out of here, burn it, throw it in a pit, slam it with a hammer, LaGuardia it. I don't know if you're familiar with what LaGuardia did back in the day, the mayor of New York when they were bent. Anyway, slams them with hammers. I call it LaGuardiaing it. It's hard to say that word, but LaGuardia. Good stuff. Okay, so I was going to go through a list of things. So consoles, I fixed Sega CDs, I fixed CDIs, I fixed 3DOs, I fixed Sega Saturns, I fixed all kind of weirdo, rare things like that not that, I guess they're rare, but they're just outskirts gaming type consoles that are worth good money if they're working, and things that I got for cheap because it wasn't working and I made work. Pinball arcades, I bought I paid $50 for a T2 arcade machine with the 2 guns on it. That came when the guy turned it on. He's like, it's got a blue screen. I don't know what's wrong with it. He wanted $100 in the listing. I was like, how about $50? I got it home. I flipped the test switch. It turned on. That's luck. You know what I mean? That was like, maybe this will work. Test switch. Hey, the whole thing worked. Everything's working. The guns are working. It calibrated. It's amazing. This game works. One of his kids had flipped the wrong switch. Don't turn it on. I don't want to be like you do say scumbag reseller, but there are tricks and there are tactics to use when buying things.
Well, that brings up an important
Don't
thing.
turn things on at their house. If they haven't plugged it in and offered to turn it on, don't. And you don't want to plug in a pinball machine without making sure that everything's going to be fine before you plug it in anyway. So just don't. Take it home, work on it at home, and be fair about the offer too. But don't give
There's
yourself
an
away.
etiquette
You know what I'm
to it.
saying? Don't give away any, because the point of this is you're going to spend money to get these things working again. So if you can get it as cheap as you can possibly get it that way.
It ties into something we talked about last year. And there may be instances in which you feel bad about, God, I know this thing's worth this, but I'm putting the money. Don't overpay, because you assume the risk. You always assume the risk. There's never any guarantees. There's too much there that could go wrong.
Did I take a picture of the Pac-Man thing and send it to you that I picked up, the cocktail cap?
You did.
I picked up a cocktail Pac-Man for $75 2 days ago here in, I had to drive up to Kennesaw to get it. They wanted $75 on the Facebook ad for a sit-down cocktail cabinet. It works, sometimes it cuts off, was the ad. I wrote the lady, about 10 minutes later she got back with me. I said, is it still available? Yes, I'd love to come get it. Can I come get it tomorrow? Sure, let's do that. I got there, she was like, we've had about 15 people offering us more money for this thing, but we had said we were gonna sell it to you first. I said, well, how much did they offer you? One guy down the street said he'd give me $125 if I let him come get it and not give it to you. I said, I'm gonna give you $125 because it is probably worth $300 as it sits. I would think just this Pac-Man cocktail body and it's really nice. But if it's half working, I'm gonna give you $125. How's that? And I made it right with that guy. You know what I mean? Like there's maybe $500 in one of those, in really good shape. $700. It's going in my arcade. I'm trying to fill up the arcade right now, so the better deal I can get, the better. But I felt like, to be fair, again, during that conversation, it turned out that there was sharks trying to shark me, and I met that shark's offer so I could not only have their respect, but feel better about the situation, because I knew $75 was a steal right off the bat. And you know what I mean? I sometimes I do have little heartstrings, but generally I'm a salesman and I'm ready to make a deal, and let's make that deal. And if you come to buy stuff from my booth, it's let's beat the internet and get this stuff out of my house. I'm not overcharging anybody. I'm undercutting everybody else that sells stuff in here because I know what I got in it, and it generally ain't much.
You know, something I talked about recently on the show was getting those seller exclusivities. And what I mean by that is some of these guys that are a little high on it, sometimes you bite the bullet if they've got lots of stuff, and maybe even more than meet them in the middle, as long as you don't put yourself in a predicament.
$75.
I've got a few instances now where I've got sellers that will sell to me only. You know, they sell publicly, flea markets, places that they go, but I get the call first.
I have that too. I have honey holes
and
friends that I've treated right in the past that come back and repeat business to me. And
so there's an etiquette to it, and that's good to try to develop those kind of relationships in that instance, for sure.
Same thing with basically, I started, you want to know about the soldering and stuff, I bought a broken pinball machine and I made it come to life again, and it took me about 8 months in all to get from this thing I have zero knowledge to this thing 100% works again, and I can tell you everything about it, with the exception of I don't know the actual voltage numbers, I don't know what the certain things are called, but basically I know what's going on in here. But an F-14 Tomcat for $400 that sold for $1,450, $100 Tron arcade that sold for $3,800, a Bucky O'Hare Nintendo game that had a busted freaking two-prong resistor, I guess was a resistor in it, and it was fried, and I pulled it out and swapped it, and it came right back to life. The Virtual Boy box that was...
Please talk about the Virtual Boy box.
It was taped.
This is a
Virtual Boy, Nintendo Virtual Boy cardboard box. The box is worth about $100 just because it's a Nintendo box.
Yep.
This one looked like it had been through NOM, and it was taped up with brown, that brown sticky paper tape. Oh my God, like around and around and around and around and over in a mummy. It was a mummy of a box, and all you could see was it was all brown tape and a V, and I was like, is that a Virtual Boy box? In the back of this old Goodwill area. Got it down. Guy said, you can take that home. Gave it to me for free. I spent $5 on a bottle of Goo Gone, and I sprayed that thing down and lightly, gently, for about 3 hours, pulled brown crap tape off of this box.
And it didn't damage the Goo Gone, didn't damage the paper?
It didn't damage the box. It'll darken it for a little bit. It'll get like it's wet. It'll kind of darken, but that goo, it'll just eventually dry out, and it doesn't affect the original paint. It doesn't affect the original cardboard outside picture. Mm-hmm. That thing, on a scale out of 10, I'd put it at a 6.5. After it was a 1 when I got it, and I got it back to a 6.5. And I put a Virtual Boy in it, and I sold that bad boy. And those are the kind of things that make me proud of. Man, I can't believe I did that. You know what I mean?
Because otherwise, it's doomed.
But it was nothing but Goo Gone and time, and being careful and caring about something. So if you care about stuff, you'll take your time and you'll do it right, or you won't because you don't. So.
And to tack on to those totals there, I'm going to talk the totals of what you see here today. And again, we're going to take a look at these, when we conclude. But total invested in all these items, $40. Total value, $278 for all this stuff. Some of it I'm keeping, and I think just about all of it I'm keeping.
And again, generally everything that I turn and burn, it goes right back into buying more stuff so I can play something else, because I'm a freaking nerd about this stuff. Especially pinball, God, you have to have the machine. There's no, virtual pinball exists, but it's not, you know what I mean? You want to play Bone Busters, you got to get a Bone Busters. You want to play Cactus Jack, you better go get a Cactus Jack. These are the things I want to play. So I will continue to do this. And I have room at one time for about 3 pinballs in my little area down in my house. So they're constantly, every month, something else is coming and going and swapping out, and I'm making a deal so I can trade that to get to this. I can't stop, I won't stop, I love doing it. thank you guys for listening to my annoying weirdness.
At this point, I do want to open the floor for some Q&A. If anybody's got any questions for us about this stuff, the refurbishment methods, any of the above, any of the aforementioned.
How do we get you on YouTube?
Well, I've got cards up here with all the information.
This is Emceemur, and he actually does have little business cards printed up. But I'm Capn Retro. If you check out my channel, it's CAPTN Retro, all one word.
If they find
Capn
me,
Retro.
they'll find you probably, because I think they link those things together. But again, I'm going to invite everybody up here when we conclude to take a look at this stuff, and I urge you to take a card. Trying to add to Mer Nation, you know, we do all kind of things on the channel, live streams of, you know, both old and new, and of course videos of my hunting in the wild, stuff like that, really bringing up the quality of what we do there and really making a fantastic presentation of it. Have a lot of fun with it, so it's good stuff. Anybody else? Yes, sir?
Kind of a two-parter. How do you guys feel about reproductions in that taking donor cartridges, taking the mass ROMs out, putting EPROMs in to make physical copies of unreleased games, saving them? How do you feel about doing that? Because I have mixed emotions myself about doing that. And have you ever done it?
I don't want to answer your question with a question, but how do you feel about it?
I think it depends. If you're doing
And it
it
can.
for an unreleased game for yourself, or you're giving it to somebody, don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But I think it can get out of hand because we're eating up all these donor cartridges.
That's what I was going to say. I think in the time we live in now that you can get, there's ample places to find new old cart shells. So
Yeah.
stop killing the old games, and because we're going to run out of bases loaded.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like golf, pro wrestling.
Golf is gone.
Yeah.
Gyromite.
It's gonna happen, you know, and everybody opening up the 5 screws looking for the gyromite.
I'm not going to say I haven't done that. I've got a Gyromite, because I mean, I had more than one of them.
It's crazy when you think you're alone in this world, because I didn't know anybody else did stuff like this until YouTube 3.5 years ago.
I thought I had a problem.
I thought I was by myself being this guy. I didn't know conventions existed. I just do it, and I've been doing it now. The game refurbishing and the home console stuff for at least 7 years now, and only 3.5 have I been aware that other people like me exist. To be honest, I just knew I could sell the stuff. I'd take it to video game stores. There's a place up in what's that, Max Games up in Woodstock. I'd take stuff up there and sell to him. I just dumped off stuff so I could get the newer thing I wanted, and I was doing it for myself and by myself, and it's so awesome to have joined a community of people that think like I do and think about the things that I think about, and I didn't realize there was that many nerds, and I love it.
But yeah, if it affects
I've been a
the
nerd my whole
community
life,
and if it
and
affects the
I've always been
collecting
proud of
negatively,
it. So
yeah, no, I mean, I'd have a problem with it too. It just depends on. Now, I think the extent of what I've done on that is just the Gyromite flip. I did disassemble a Gyromite to get the Famicom converter out of it, and I do use it, to be fair. Not that necessarily excludes it. And also, to be fair, if this helps, I did save the shell and the screw, so it's safe. I would never throw it away or anything. It could still go back to normal again, but
I personally love the homebrew market, and I think that's incredible that people are still making games for my favorite machines, and that you can buy them on a physical cart. So that's what I love. I do love that it exists. I think stop cannibalizing. We've got enough boards now. There's companies making all the stuff you need to make your own repros. I picked up a Holy Diver from a buddy of mine, like Games from the Grave, if you're looking for some repro stuff, and he makes great stuff. And Holy Diver should have come out in the US. I don't know why that game didn't make it out over here. It's great. So.
Anybody else?
How bad is disc rot for games for disc once they get past 20 years?
That's an excellent question, and it's something I'm suffering from right now.
It's something I notice more on GameCube stuff, honestly. Even if they're not scratched, GameCube games are starting to give up the ghost early.
Now, you mean discs or like floppy disk stuff?
No, disc is like I said, Gamecube and also Dreamcast.
Okay,
Yeah.
what I was referring to was these.
Yeah,
the film in them actually dying down.
same
Now,
thing.
I haven't had too many instances. I don't think I've ever found a disc that's actually just been rotten. It would have to be cracked or just scratched beyond repair first.
I'll bring you a stack, because at the Game Switch store, she has like most of her big banger GameCube games don't work. Like Sunshine, Smash Brothers, Double Dash. She has 2 or 3 Wind Wakers that are both. They all look gorgeous, and they do not.
I was gonna say, how do you
Something's
tell?
wrong, because you put it in the machine and it goes, this no, not red. This cannot be red. Please open.
And now that he mentions that, I will say,
and maybe it's the GameCube laser. Maybe it's not the disc. Maybe it's a laser issue. I haven't really investigated. I just know that there's stacks of GameCube stuff at the store.
But it may not be, because obviously we're using different GameCubes, and I had noticed a lot of beautiful GameCube copies. I've got, hey, this is gonna work, and then it just doesn't. And I know there's nothing wrong with my GameCube. So again, and I talked about this earlier too, and it may just have to do with the platform. I noticed that PS2 is probably the most resilient overall as far as holding up over time and surviving really extensive repairs. But, you can sand them, grind them down, whatever you got to do, and they usually do bounce back. But the GameCube is extraordinarily temperamental in comparison.
Because it sometimes will work with a giant scratch in it. I have GameCube games that I have buffed and buffed and buffed, and I can't get this scratch out, but the game still plays just fine, even with the scratch, and I've just buffed it because I wanted to try and get it out. But I'm like, what is going on with this thing?
So I realize that doesn't entirely answer the question, but it does home in on, I think, the root of the problem.
You mentioned Dreamcast. It definitely has temperamental lasers as well, and you have to reseat your laser a good bit on older Dreamcast models if you hadn't changed the laser altogether. There's lots of videos on how to fix your laser if your Dreamcast stopped reading games.
I've been through 4 Dreamcasts.
Sonic Adventure seems to be one that'll lock up on everybody's Dreamcast. Is it doesn't want to read it, just doesn't want to read it. That happened in a copy I had the other day, but I adjusted my laser and put it back in and it read it. So I'm like, oh, it's not the disc, so I sold the disc.
Now, building on that, what do you think are the chief contributions to that kind of damage? Are we talking about heat?
I mean, just
warpage.
Time degradation eats that stuff, right? Like it's only got a shelf life of like 50 years for most. I think disc items and CD-based material is 50 years is the half-life of it or whatever. Yeah. So I really don't know. I'm not technically expertise.
Oh, well, what did I
with a D on the end, because that's a word.
But expertise. Yeah, that's it's a GameCube thing. It really is. I mean, Xbox is probably next on the list, but PS2 is the most endurance-based I've seen.
I was going to say, CDs in general, a lot depends on
the top,
where they bought them from, what cheap manufacturer in China
printed it up,
had the most.
I didn't think about that, but that's a variable.
It's materials. It's all about who.
A lot of new Xbox games are printed in Mexico. I noticed just from what they write on the back of the package. So they could come from a lot of different areas, and that may be another variable to take into consideration there. When
it was what planet came
trying
from.
to figure out what they used. We talking about different components they're made out of, even though they look identical. I don't know. That's a lot to think about.
I will say
cut the
this,
cost.
I have yet to come across Atari stuff, like cartridge-based stuff that doesn't work still. That's hard to kill, bro. It's hard to kill
really
Atari.
Is.
It's hard to kill an 8-bit Nintendo. It's really tough to kill a tank Nintendo. The top loaders too, but
as long as it's
even if it flashes
stored,
red, you can get that thing to work. The red flash, go in there and cut a thing on the lockout chip, and you can get it to stop doing that, and then eventually you'll start reading that game again. So, yeah.
So, yeah, the Atari stuff. Yeah, I got a console from somebody for like $1 on Craigslist, right? Like, I don't have any cords or anything for it.
Yeah.
I bought it. It looked like it had been like left outside and had sanded.
Oh man.
Completely tore it down, cleaned it up, made sure all the contacts are clean. I had extra cables, put them on, put it all back together, stuck in the combat cartridge.
Yeah. I
It's a
think
beautiful thing.
I think that might be an American thing, man. Just things were made better long ago. The Atari was made with better parts in the 70s, and by the 80s they were getting these cheaper parts. And next thing you know, the Nintendo's using this, and that's Atari's gone, and this and that, and they're just using the cheapest, whoever's the cheapest bidder, to make this part, and we'll send it off to those guys. And I think that's washing machines last 5 years now. We had a washing machine from the time I was a kid that lasted up until the 90s, easily from 70-something to 93 before my parents had to swap that out. But they've had like 5 in the last 2 years. So it's ridiculous,
Anything else before we wrap up?
Manufacturing sucks nowadays, I think is the answer to that question.
I've been concerned with the rise of companies that are pushing ahead, like Stadia. They're pushing very heavy subscription services.
Oh, man.
I wonder if that's going to really bite into market power of the consumer. It's something that very, very.
A lot of
Yes.
people think, a lot of people thought that it was going to at first, and I think everybody's kind of shifted gears on that because they've since announced that not only are you subscribing to this, you're subscribing to the publisher, and you're buying the game at full price. It's easy to push digital. It's easy to make us all go. I'll even admit it's nice when I see I have a game digital for whatever reason. Like, oh, I don't have to get them, find the disc now. But doing it like that, I just don't think it's a threat. I hope the best for it. I hope anything that allows us to play games can do well and can have its own line of enthusiasts. But I really couldn't believe that when they said that, because nobody's going to pay $60 for, a game that's already going on 10 years old and then subscribe to this thing and then pay this thing too just to be able to stream it. That doesn't seem feasible to me. Again, I'm speculating, but Stadia in particular, I don't unless they reform some of how they're doing that, I don't think it's gonna make a dent because we're all about our physical copies.
Yeah, I think the death of physical media is further away than a lot of people think. I mean, again, I'm not an analyst or anything, but I just know that you come here, there's 2,000 people here looking for games and wanting to play physical things they can touch and they can walk up to and they can put a quarter in. So gaming is alive and well, and collectors, we're always going to be here. Molly is, how old are you, 11, 12 now? 13?
11.
74 years old. She's the next generation. She's the future of collecting. Her collection is ridiculous. Your 3DS and all that stuff you've got, I mean, I just think it's a bubble that will deflate but will never burst. Let's put it that way. It'll fluctuate.
Well, we're about out of time for tonight.
Physical media going away is the bad thing, though. I will say that. I think physical things need to be here. The interaction with tangibility is nice. And I own it. I own that. Guess what? I can put it in the machine and play it whenever I want to. Oh, look, I don't own this game anymore that I paid $20 for 3 years ago, and now it's not on my files. There's the digital problem. They're just going to pull stuff out of your cloud and do whatever they want. They're in control that you're not, and that's not good.
I hope
Thank y'all so
everybody's
much, by the
gonna
way.
come away from this tonight with, again, a renewed vigor to get out there and not only find these things, but just remember how important it is what you're doing when you're rescuing these things and how much life you're adding on to retro gaming and why that's so important. And just, you really got to be, not that you aren't already, but to be passionate about that stuff, to really think about how great a thing it is that you're doing at that point. I mean, it's really awesome. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Again, I urge you to come up here and take a look at some of these artifacts if you want to have a look at them. Take a card, and I hope you'll join us on the YouTube channel. Be part of Mer Nation, because we do this stuff every week on and week off. And we have so much fun with it, so.
And don't watch my channel.
Well, you can, but.
Too bad. It's loud and stupid.
But yeah, I appreciate everybody coming. It was a pleasure to speak to you tonight. It was an honor.